Let's get rolling on a Friday. Glasses in session. We go to the Glasser guest line. Check in with Jeremy Werner. Give him a follow on X at jwerner247, IllinoisInquirer.com, 24/7 Sports as well. Jeremy, great having you on, man. This Illinois team, a lot of people are excited about the Illini for the upcoming season. Since you've been covering the team, can you ever remember a season with this much excitement coming into it?
Definitely not. I mean, I was in school for the 2007 Rose Bowl team, and there was a lot of excitement after even Rashard Mendenhall, Jay Lehman, some of the stars of that team moved on because you had Juice Williams, Regis Benn, but no one was thinking college football playoff or, top 10 team going into that year. But there's a lot of excitement about Illinois, but there is also a little bit of, cautious, negativity because Illinois, whenever they've had a great season in recent memory, it followed it up with a really disappointing one. 2001, the Sugar Bowl. They followed that up with a 5-win season, miss a bowl game. After that 2007 season where they made the Rose Bowl, they followed that up with a 5-win season. 2022, you don't got to go back that far. Brett Bielema has this breakthrough year. Illinois starts 7-1. They stumbled down the stretch, but an 8-win season was huge for this program, but then they followed that up with a 5-win season and missed a bowl game by 1 win. So there's a lot of history of Illinois following up good seasons with poor seasons, but I do think Brett Bielema has really solidified this roster to a point where there should be high hopes for this team. There should be talk of this is a college football playoff contender that could be the 5th, 4th, or team like that in the Big Ten because they return 18 of the 22 starters that beat a team that a lot of people thought should have been in the college football playoff last year in South Carolina, and they did it without their best player, Pat Bryant, who's the 3rd-round pick of the Denver Broncos. So to get your quarterback back, Luke Altmaier, to get your entire offensive line back, and to get most of your playmakers back from the back 8 of your defense, plus you get your head coach back, you get your offensive coordinator back for a 4th year, you get your defensive coordinator back for a 3rd year. There's just so much continuity that they should build on last year. Whether that's an 8-win season or a 10 or 11-win season, we'll see. But I do think Illinois' floor is very high, and if everything goes right, this could be a team we're talking about as one of the top 12 teams after the end of the regular season.
Yeah, no question. And obviously, Jeremy, I mean, the era that we're in, it's rare that you have this much continuity, right? This many returning pieces coming back for another year in college football. Of those 18 returning starters that you mentioned who are coming back, who are like the one or maybe 2 players that you really think are the most pivotal to this year's team success that are returning?
Yeah, whenever you talk about a team and who's returning, it's got to start with the quarterback, right? And that's Luke Altmaier. And I think anybody who's making a list of top returning quarterbacks in the Big Ten has to have Luke Altmaier in the top 2 or 3. He was such a competitive advantage for them last year. The Big Ten wasn't rolling deep in a lot of quarterbacks, but I would say he was the 4th or 5th guy. And while he had Dylan Gabriel, Drew Aller, a lot of good quarterbacks in the Big Ten, Luke was as valuable as any of them. And he was a good player throughout most of games, but his numbers in the 4th quarter and in the clutch were truly elite. He had an 171 passer efficiency rating in their 6 one-score games in the 4th quarter, had 3 game-winning touchdown passes in the final 2 minutes of regulation or overtime, just made big plays with both his arms and his arm and his legs, and he just returns for a 3rd year just so confident, so comfortable, and just having the continuity of being in the same offense, the same offensive coordinator for a 3rd year is massive. Now, he's got a bunch of new targets he's got to throw to with Pat Bryant now in the NFL, Zachary Franklin now in the NFL. But Illinois went to the transfer portal, got Hudson Clement, the leading receiver from West Virginia, Justin Bullock, who had a couple huge games for Ball State. And they have some guys that are coming up through the ranks, Colin Dixon, Hank Beatty, who they think can take a step forward. But Luke just gives them such a high floor as somebody who's a stable quarterback and somebody that Tennessee really wanted to get during the offseason. And Luke stayed true to Illinois despite Tennessee having more, obviously, money to give him. Luke stayed here at Illinois. He's getting big money at Illinois too, but he could have left. But he loves the comfort at Illinois, and he thinks he can set himself up best for the NFL at Illinois.
Jeremy, what area do you think is Illinois the strongest at? You mentioned they returned their entire offensive line. They got returners all over the defense. We just talked about Altmaier at quarterback. Which area, if you had to solo out one, do you think is the best on this Illinois roster?
The one thing I would say is the coaching staff is an advantage. I just don't think there's a lot of coaching staffs that if you give them the same talent, they're going to outcoach Illinois. Like Oregon, Indiana, I think are in that discussion. But I do think Brett Bielema and his staff are really strong. So to return all that they have on the staff is huge. But I would say the secondary. Xavier Scott was a first-team All-Big Ten selection. Could have been a mid-round draft pick this past year, but he plays that nickel position for Illinois and is all over the field. Changed the game against Kansas last year, but is one of their top cover guys. Sticky in coverage, but also physical. And then Matthew Bailey returns at strong safety. And he really, after missing the 2023 season, became a star in the back half of the season. I think he could really take off as somebody who makes plays on the ball, both in run support and in coverage. He's kind of like a hybrid linebacker safety at 6'2", 215 pounds, can cover tight ends, but is all over the field. And then they return their three other starters elsewhere in the secondary. So that is a huge strength of this team. The big key is they have to replace all their starters and their top four guys on the defensive line, but they went to the transfer portal, got James Thompson Jr., Kurt Neal from Wisconsin, added some nice pieces to help complement Gabe Akis, who's one of the best pass rushers in college football on the outside.
We're talking with Jeremy Werner here on Send It In. Give him a follow on X at jwerner247. The schedule, Jeremy, is also why so many people are high on the Illini for the upcoming season. Obviously, all the returning production, the fact that they're coming off a 10-win season. But you look at their schedule, no Penn State, no Michigan, no Oregon this season. Obviously, Ohio State's going to be a difficult game, but they play them at home in Champaign. So outside of the Ohio State game, because that's definitely the game you look at, probably going to be the toughest one to win. What's the other game on the schedule that you think could be the toughest, that you think could be the most pivotal to Illinois wanting to have another really good season?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they have 7 of their Big Ten opponents finished under 500 in the Big Ten last year. This is a schedule that does set up to have a special season if you take advantage of it. That said, it's the Big Ten. It's difficult games week after week, probably a lot of close games, which Illinois won a lot of close games last year, 5-1 in one-score games. Can they repeat that? Did they have luck last year? Does that swing the other way? But I think the early part of the schedule isn't easy. They have Duke in week 2, a road game at Duke, who won 9 games last year, and they just added Darian Mensah, quarterback from Tulane, who was one of the top transfer quarterbacks in the country last year. So they upgraded, they think, from Malik Murphy. They spent a lot of money to get Mensah. So I'm interested to see. That's a huge test early on the road. And then your Big Ten openers at Indiana, a team that was just in the college football playoff. I know they have a ton to replace, but they also landed a big-time quarterback in Mendoza out of the transfer portal. So I think those 2 out of that first 4 games on the road are really difficult and will really set the tone of the season. Reminds me of last year when Illinois had Kansas, who was a ranked team in week 2, come to Illinois, and then Nebraska on the road to open the Big Ten. Those weren't 2 easy games, but Illinois found a way to win 2 close games to start them 4-0. That's what kind of set the mark for their confidence and, just that they could be that kind of team the rest of the way. So I look at those 2 games because you have 7 straight games to start the year before an off week, and they're the hardest games that they have, I think, on the schedule for the most part. And then I do think a trip to Washington is a sneaky hard one. Demon Williams is a really good player, and Ryan Walters is the former Illinois defensive coordinator who played Illinois really well when he was at Purdue. So I do think that's a sneaky one, but the back 5 games are really advantageous for Illinois, but they got to get through some of those tough early tests, especially on the road.
I agree with you, though. That Duke-Indiana game certainly going to be interesting those first 4 weeks of the season. At BetMGM, Jeremy, the win total for the Illini is at 8.5. For people that want to bet the over, think that Illinois is going to win 9 or more games, it's plus 145. So odds makers think Illinois is going to go 8-4 this season. What I think is going to surprise a lot of people, again, considering all the returning production, considering the schedule, and the fact that this team won 10 games last year. Vegas has seen about 8-4 out of Illinois. What's your prediction for the upcoming season? What do you think their record's going to be?
Yeah, that 8.5 number is really, really hard for me. Because, listen, I think Illini fans are shooting for 10, right? You win 10 in the Big Ten, I think you have a great chance to make the college football playoff. I just think that's really hard, and I just wonder if some of the close game, wins they had last year without a Pat Bryant on the roster, do those turn the other way? Just does it come back towards you a little bit? When it was at 7.5, I was taking the over. At 8.5, I'm really not confident even picking a number there because in my preseason predictions, I think today I'd lean towards 9-3, but I'm still considering 8-4. And I think that'd be a really good year for Illinois. It'd be disappointing when you go in with some college football playoff hope. And I do think they're capable of 10. But yeah, I just think it's hard to win games in the Big Ten, and Duke and Indiana early on in the schedule. USC is very talented coming to Champaign, but I do think this team has a really high floor. So I was over the 7.5. That 8.5 makes it more difficult for me.
I like it. I mean, we talk about all the time on the show about grabbing those numbers. 7.5, good bet. 8.5 feels like the perfect number. Great stuff, Jeremy Werner. Make sure you guys give him a follow on X at jwerner247, IlliniInquirer.com, 24/7 Sports as well. Jeremy, love the insight, man. Appreciate the time. Have a great rest of your summer and hope to catch up during the season.
You guys too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff there. Jeremy Werner talking a little Illinois football. Now it is time for us to dive in to the Illini schedule. And again, right, we did all these previews last year. We've already done some previews this year. And ever since this conference realignment, we get a couple teams just like Illinois, where the schedule on paper, advantageous, right? Avoid Michigan, avoid Oregon, avoid Penn State. Really the only top-tier team that Illinois plays on their schedule is Ohio State, and they get them at home. But I think a lot of those road games are going to be challenging, right? And Jeremy talked about it. The week 2 game at Duke, that just feels like a trappy, scary, ugly game that Illinois' got to be careful of. How about the road trip to Bloomington to take on Indiana to kick off Big Ten play? That could be a tricky game as well. Then, of course, traveling across the country, playing Washington in Seattle. We had Clayton Safey talking about Michigan on Wednesday, gave us that great stat. Teams traveling multiple time zones in the Big Ten last year, 6-27. That's not going to be an easy game for Illinois, playing out there in Seattle. And then how about the game against Wisconsin in Camp Randall, second to last week of the season? Even though Wisconsin's got a really hard schedule, they're not going to be one of the top-tier teams in the Big Ten. Camp Randall, never an easy place to play. Obviously a rivalry game between Illinois and Wisconsin, so that could be tricky as well. That win total sitting at 8.5 is so interesting, isn't it? Because Illinois was a 10-win team last season. They returned 18 starters. They're one of the most experienced teams. They're one of the most experienced teams in all of college football, but also one of the teams that return the most production of any team there is in college football. You just don't see that nowadays in the NIL era. A team return 18 starters, especially a team that won 10 games, bringing back all that production. And the fact that their win total is at 8.5, and not only is it at 8.5, but the over is plus 145. That to me feels like a trap, you guys. It really does. It feels like it's too easy. I mean, with the schedule, the production, the amount of wins that they had last year, there were a couple teams that remind me of Illinois from last season. You know, a lot of people were high on Virginia Tech last year. They go under the win total. A lot of people were high on Missouri last year. They go under the win total. A lot of people were high on Iowa last year. They go under the win total. Clemson, they go under the... It just feels like Illinois is another one of those teams. We're all trying to hit that long shot. We're all trying to find that team that's plus 500, plus 800 to make the playoff, 40-1 to win their conference. We're all looking for that long shot, and I think Illinois is going to be amongst one of the most popular long shots that people take this season for a lot of reasons, right? There is a lot to like with this Illinois team. But again, they're not going to be sneaking up on anybody this year. People know how experienced they are, how good that they are going to be this season. And even though they necessarily don't play some of the bigger brands in the Big Ten, they don't play some of the most talented rosters, don't overlook some of those tricky road games that they have, like we were talking about, at Duke, at Indiana, at Wisconsin, at Washington, and then obviously the home game against Ohio State as well. So it's going to be tough for Illinois. I will point out, too, another thing that's really advantageous for their schedule. Illinois is the first team that I've seen this season that's only playing one team who is coming off their bye, and that's Purdue. That's the only team. I feel like all the other teams that we've previewed so far, they have at least 2 or 3 games on their schedule where they're playing teams that are coming off their bye week, so they get 2 weeks to prep for whatever team they're playing. Illinois is only going to have to deal with that one time this season. Purdue's going to be the only team that plays Illinois coming off the bye week. So there is a lot to like with Illinois, and yet for a team that won 10 games last year, their win total is at 8.5, and it's plus 145. I would bet the under. I would bet the under, or I would pass for me if I was looking at the Illini.